Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the Third Eagle of the Apocalypse and the co-prophet of the End Times. This is the second program in my series on Daniel chapter number 9, which is actually a warning to the modern nation of Israel that it will lose World War III. Now, for many years, Bible scholars have assumed that the only end times verse in the entire chapter 9 of Daniel is the last verse, and that is verse number 27. The Lord has revealed to me that there are actually 4 end times verses in this chapter. Now, for many years, the false prophets have been saying that the last verse says there will be a confirmation of a covenant between the Antichrist and Israel. Nothing could be further from the truth. The fact is, the 4 end time verses predict a war which Israel will lose in the end times. And this is the message from Daniel that I want to convey to you today. Now, if you have watched my previous videos on Daniel chapters number 4, 7, and 11, you know that he uses numerology to explain that Barack Obama and the United States will be defeated in World War III. And also in chapter number 9, Daniel uses numerology to show that Israel will also be defeated in World War III. Now, this amazing numerology is fascinating to understand. And in our first program, we noticed that 22 of the 27 verses are in pairs. For example, verse number 1 and 2 start out with the exact same phrase, in the first year. Now, in my first program, we had gotten up to verse number 22 and 23. Let's see how these two verses form a pair. And he informed me, now this he is the angel Gabriel, and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give you skill and understanding. At the beginning of your supplications, the commandment came forth, and I am come to show you, for you are greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision. Now, the word that is common in verses number 22 and 23 is the word understand. In most of the paired verses, in Daniel chapter number 9, the common word is not found anywhere else in the chapter. This word understand is also unique, even though there are other words in the chapter that are translated as understand. In 22 and 23, for example, the Latin word is intelligere. I am not sure what the Hebrew word is, but maybe some Hebrew scholars in the YouTube audience can help me out. And they can tell me whether this translation of the word understand is unique in all of the chapter. Verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon your holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. So the common word in these two verses is the number 7. And most Bible scholars understand that the 70th week has not yet occurred, and that is the 7 years of tribulation. Notice also that the 69 weeks until Christ the Messiah is a period of 69 weeks, and that is divided into 2 sections, 7 and 62. Now, that is not necessary for this particular verse, but it is necessary for the next verse in the end times interpretation. Verse 26, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Now, of course, the word that marks off these two verses as a pair is the word desolate. And as I said before, the confirming of the covenant is the part that people do not understand. And that is because they do not recognize the 3 verses that precede this verse, which are end times verses, and which will explain what is meant by the confirmation of the covenant. It is not a peace treaty between the Antichrist and Israel. Now, there are 2 ways that Daniel reveals the 3 verses that are end times verses in addition to verse number 27. The first is through these paired verses. In other words, 27 is paired with verse 26. So 26 must be also an end times verse. Now, the other way Daniel reveals the end time verses is through the structure of having 10 verses paired at the end of the chapter and 12 verses paired at the beginning of the chapter. This creates a balance in the chapter around a fulcrum of 5 verses which are not paired. This is an example of parallelism. In other words, the last 10 verses in 5 pairs are similar to the first 12 verses in 6 pairs, except that Daniel has added an extra pair. Therefore, the only 2 verses that can legitimately balance each other would be the last 2 verses. In other words, 26 and 27 are balanced by 11 and 12. Therefore, we have found the other 2 end times verses. All 4 verses, therefore, are 11, 12, 26, and 27. These are the verses which Daniel will reveal to us indicate the downfall of Israel in World War III. Now, many people may object that this is not perfect parallelism because there are 5 sections at the end and 6 sections at the beginning. But if you count the words in these sections, you will find that they are almost equal. In other words, the last 10 verses have approximately 390 words in them. The first 12 verses have approximately 387 words in them. And I suspect that in the Hebrew, the number is even closer. And the middle 5 verses, which form a balance for the other 2, have almost exactly half the number of verses as in the first and the last sections. Now, none of this numerology is accidental, and none of it has ever been understood before. The whole purpose of this numerology is to reveal that there are 4 end times verses, and we need to understand them to know what Daniel is prophesying to the modern nation of Israel. Let's look at the first of these 4 verses, and that is number 11. Verse number 11. Yea, all Israel. So right off the bat, we see that Daniel is addressing the nation of Israel. And we know this is an end times verse. Therefore, Daniel is addressing the modern nation of Israel. All Israel have transgressed your law. Israel does not follow the Torah. This is what Daniel is warning Israel all about, even by departing that they might not obey your voice. Remember, God offered the Israelites a choice between a blessing and a curse. But if they did not follow the Torah, then they would be given the curse. And what is the curse? The curse is that they would be ruled by their enemies. Daniel here is warning the nation of Israel today in 2010 that you will be defeated by your Muslim nations. So why is Daniel prophesying that this year, 2010, the curse of the Lord is going to fall upon Israel? Because Israel is no different than any other decadent Western nation. They have adopted child pornography, prostitution, drugs, gay pride parades, you name it, they are no different than the West. They have abandoned Torah. And as a result, God has abandoned them. And the curse will fall upon Israel. And in the next program, I will review the last three of these end-time verses. That is 12, 26, and 27. Because Daniel reveals when this curse is going to fall upon the modern nation of Israel. And if you would like more information or a free copy of my book, Revelation Unraveled, simply write to the address you see on your screen.